Okay, and we're recording. Sitting here with Sam Boase-Miller, a cellist and soundtrack artist for the audio drama Marsfall, which I'm sure thousands of you know and thousands of us know and love. And you can even see on the hoodie that you're wearing that you got the brand. How are you doing, Sam? How's things
I
going?
I'm doing well. It's great to be here, John. Thanks
Cool.
for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's a long time coming. I think I first contacted you about almost a year ago, I think.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Marsfall was one of the first points of contact for me to try and get the conversation going. So I'm glad we finally got around to it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the chat.
Me too. The stars have aligned, so
It's not as
we're
well.
finally here.
Nice. On a Friday afternoon.
That's right.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, and so from here on, it's really just a line by line kind of conversation. So you can just kick off with the easy stuff. So like a little bit about your musical background, what instruments you grew up playing, what music do you listen to, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I started playing cello in school. It was sort of like a string music petting zoo where they brought in all the string orchestral string instruments, so violin, viola, double bass, and cello, and into my public high school, and they showcased these instruments. And my good friend at the time was playing viola, and so I thought, oh, I really want to play viola. And so I expressed this to uh, the director of the orchestra that had come, and she was like, "No, you don't want to play viola. Your hands are big. You should play the cello." So I was already at 9 years old being told what to do and like what musical instrument I should be taking up. So I started playing the cello, and I realized I really connected to the voice of the instrument, and it's actually the closest instrument other than the trombone to the range of the human voice. So it's both really, really low, and it also gets into that high coloratura kind of soprano end of things. And so I've always felt like the cello is a really expressive instrument. It was my only instrument for quite some time. I started singing a little bit in high school. I did a little bit of acting and small amount of composition when I was in high school, but I didn't really do a whole lot apart from the cello until Marsfall started to become kind of an idea. So probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I started getting into digital audio workspaces, workstations. I personally work with Ableton, and so that kind of like combination of classical music study. I even went to like music school for cello. I went to a private boarding high school, Interlochen Arts Academy, for that, and was that was such an amazing gift to be able to go there and to meet all these incredible high school students that were also inspired in the arts to pursue that. And I think that really laid a foundation in me to kind of go my own path and to kind of look at things maybe from a different perspective. I had a great teacher at Interlochen who started as a classical guitarist, a jazz and classical guitarist, and then he switched over to the cello. And so he kind of recognized some things in me, like I wasn't totally 100% with the cello. I wanted to experience other art forms, and he was like all about that. And he was one of the only teachers that was really pushing me to do kind of like alternative cello stuff.
Mhm.
And
I see. So you had like that kind of classical upbringing, where I hear the same thing from a lot of people who've been down that path. That it can be a little bit rigid, but
yeah, like a
yeah,
pigeonhole, you
yeah,
stay in
yeah,
your lane.
yeah,
Don't
yeah,
go outside of the orchestra or the string quartet. You got to
yeah,
stay
yeah.
here.
Which
That's not how things
makes
are.
for great players. But I mean, if you're looking for artists, if you're looking for people, then they have to break things. They have to break the rules and all that. Yeah,
Yeah. And if
yeah,
you're looking for a job these days, you're not going to find it in the orchestra or in a string quartet.
that's
The
right.
odds of getting that are less than getting into the NFL or the NBA,
That's
or
right.
making the Olympic team. So,
Okay. Just one quick thing. Can you just check your waveform? Just make sure that it's not picking up my voice. Are you one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10? Just so it's a dry signal your side. Okay, great. Awesome. That was great. Just going to open this window because I'm cooking, even though it's almost winter.
oh no.
Fantastic. That's cool. Got some stuff to draw on there. So that's great. And then kind of the
Great.
same thing about Marsfall, just a couple of lines. You can just tell us about what it's about. And
Yeah.
also just describe the context of this piece. And whenever you refer to the piece, just refer to it by name. So this piece, the trial, plays during this trial scene in Marsfall, whatever.
Sure. Yeah. So Marsfall is a sci-fi slash fantasy story about the first colonists to settle on Mars. We follow them starting in the year 2047, and it's the sound palette that I was really drawing from for this is a lot of kind of 80s vibe, kind of that more digital MIDI sounds, MIDI music. And so being able to create sounds through a digital workstation was really exciting. And also bringing them together, which I feel like the song that we're going to talk about today, The Trial, with live instruments, I felt this song particularly showcases my ability to do that. And I really think that this is kind of a launching point in the season. It's episode 4, so we're not too deep into season 1 yet, where all of the characters that you've been introduced to over the first 3 episodes are finally coming together. And so this scene, the scene takes place in the trial for Andy, our colony AI, our colony artificial intelligence. It's his trial for, spoilers here, for episode 3, for closing a door on a particular colonist who was about to create havoc for the rest of the colony. So kind of that philosophical debate, the trolley debate, should you pull the lever and try to avoid most people knowing that you'll kill one person, or should you just let the trolley kill all 5 people to save the one? This is kind of the first time that we see that exemplified in our episode 3. And so this was the trial that takes place in the following episode, where all of our main characters kind of come together for the first time. And in this scene, the song's titled After the Scene, The Trial, we hear interjections from several of our characters. The point of view chapter is from Melissa, our Lieutenant Colonel's her viewpoint. And so it all takes place from her perspective, but we're also getting interjections from so many other voices from the colony. And the way that I write music, at least for Marsfall, has been in leitmotifs, which are little motives for each character or place or emotion. And so each of these characters has a different melody or a different melodic or harmonic or rhythmic motive.
Okay, cool. Let's sorry to cut you off. Let's I want to get more into that, so I'll just take a breath and we'll keep working our way down. So that's great. Yeah, you've kind of described the context and all that's fun. I think 2047 is going to be the actual year that we get colonists on Mars, to be honest. I think you guys might be on the
we might have nailed it.
So yeah. What is it now? 21. I think they'll probably start sending stuff up there like to get built by robots in like 10, 15 years, and then maybe another 15 years later get people up.
Exactly. That's how we kind of storyboarded it out, was thinking of that potential future.
Cool. Can I just ask you to reiterate that, like what we just said here, like maybe just like a little ender, like a joke or something. Maybe 2047 is the year we'll actually get people on Mars or something like that.
Great. Yeah. So maybe 2047 is actually the year that we'll get people on Mars. You know, the way that we've seen the landings go over the past year, even with the past few months, with getting the mini helicopter that's flying around from the Perseverance lander, and yeah, it's pretty incredible, the strides that we're making.
Yeah, sweet, man. Next thing is the discovery of, like, an ancient civilization.
Right, exactly.
Conspiracy theorists until
then it's life imitating art at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So you mentioned leitmotif. We'll come back to that, and then you kind of touched on live and electronic instruments. Could you just mention? No, that's fine. Don't worry. We'll skip that. We're going to do it next in this next section. Good. So one of the surprising influences. Do you mean Parliament, the funk band?
Yeah, P-Funk, Parliament Funkadelic. Yeah,
yes,
I'm a big George Clinton fan, and Yeah, I love that era of funk music from the 70s, right around, 75, 76, when they're doing a lot of live shows, just like totally bringing down the house and
Mm,
stadiums and stuff,
mm,
getting a ton of people together to listen to this music, and it's very catchy. It's super repetitive. It gets the whole crowd involved in the verses, in the
mm,
lyrics.
mm,
Everybody's going for it, and um, part of what I love about Parliament Funkadelic is that they write like melded songs, so they'll go from one song into another, and I just love their stylistic ability to keep their rhythm maybe going, but change the instrumentation. Like you'll hear the horns come in for a minute and then they'll drop out, and you'll
mm.
hear something else come in and then it'll drop out. And meanwhile, you're kind of like hearing the same like lyrics repeated over and over again, and it's just it's great music. It's like very imaginative harmonically and melodically and rhythmically, and um, the most that I could do is to honor any of these incredible musicians, bands, and just kind of feel a little bit of these influences from them.
Cool.
So not only Parliament from that same era, but the Orb is a electronic music group, um, and they're from, they've been pumping out material for a long, long time too, um, and I really got into their ethereal and ambient music where you're just like taken on a whole journey, from, and the place where you end up is certainly very different from where you started. And so a lot of
That's
my
good. Yeah, I like that. That's a good little soundbite. Could I just get you to set up the Parliament thing? Be like, one of the bands that's influenced me is Parliament. Just an intro
yeah,
line.
one of the bands that's influenced me, at least particularly for this scene and for Marsfall season one, was Parliament Funkadelic, and
So you drew a thing here. So this is where it starts to get interesting because I'm reading between the lines. You drew a connection between Parliament sort of doing like bringing in instruments and letting them go and stuff. And I've noticed that in your piece. So that might not be obvious to the listener because the listeners generally just think in terms of genre. So perhaps we should just give them an idea of something along the lines of, this might surprise you, but even though like Parliament makes funk, and this, this piece that I've made is kind of like instrumental techno or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
But you might draw a connection between the way the instruments come in and out over a long period or something like that.
yeah.
That'd be a cool insight.
So part of what I really love about Parliament Funkadelic is their ability to keep a rhythm or rhythmic figure going and bring in different instrument groups. So they'll bring in the horns, then they'll drop them out, and they'll bring in a little more of the guitar or bass, and then they'll drop that back out. And so even though my piece, The Trial, is electronic and kind of very MIDI heavy, that's something that I'm emulating a little bit there with the ability to bring in these leitmotifs, or these motives of these different characters that are represented by these other instrument groups in and out while the rhythmic figure, the clapping, continues to go. So I have,
Hmm.
thought about this and observed how the masters have done it. People like Parliament Funkadelic, people like the Orb, people like John Adams, these incredible composers and writers,
Hmm.
how they're able to bring in and release certain instrument groups. And
Totally. That's great. And then you give a mention to John Adams, which I think is fine because we've got enough there for that section, so we can move on.
great,
Cool.
great.
Thanks for bringing John Adams to my attention. By the way, I really was enjoying the just one of the first things I saw on YouTube. It was great.
Oh yeah, you should check out his Grand Pianola music.
And pianola. Cool. I'm gonna make
Yeah,
it.
it's a 3 movement. It's probably like 40 minutes long. It'll blow your mind.
Nice grand pianola. Sweet. Cool. Okay, so you'll notice breakdown, beats, Melissa claps. Those three are all sort of the same kind of section, which is now this is the meat of the show. This is kind of where we get to kind of so with the show, you might have noticed that basically the whole show is just an excuse to draw attention to whatever is playing in the background. So you feel free to use phrases like this part over here or the way the clapping continues. You just assume that the relevant piece of music will be playing when you refer to that, because I have access to your music. And so if you say something like that, I'm immediately gonna, and that's good, like those types of connections. And yeah, remember to keep referring to it by name. So the trial, this piece, the trial has got this clapping line or whatever as we go. And then, yeah, I'll get through, we'll get through these things one by one, basically. Let's get a quick, mention Eric by name. That's a good idea too. Just introduce him like, okay, so the co-creator, music editor's name is Eric Saras, and we sat down. Over to you.
Sure. Yeah, so my co-creator and music editor, he's director extraordinaire, Eric Saras. He's also one of our writers of the show. He and I first connected through music. We both went on an orchestra tour to China together, and as you can imagine, traveling to another country and touring and performing music brings people close together pretty quickly. And so I met him, and we realized that we were very similar in our outlook on music, and that just got a lot of things kind of kicked off creatively. Well, the thing that Eric and I realized right away about this project is that we wanted music to be featured really heavily, even if it wasn't first and foremost what you're hearing. It's something that's always going on. We're pretty much through composing the majority of the whole series, and so going through the script with him before writing any of the music for the trial or for any of these pieces is basically our system. We'll sit down with the script and we'll go through it after this is usually after we record the voice actors, so we know kind of what the performances sound like in our heads. We'll go through it and we'll talk about the script, and I'll write notes, and maybe we'll write an attitude or an adjective to describe how the scene needs to be heard or what it needs to sound like.
Could you describe the codified music? No, sorry to interrupt. You mentioned the codified music system. Could you describe that a bit? That's interesting.
Yeah. So actually, after this episode and the next episode, we took a little break. We hit like our mid-season finale for season 1, and we realized Eric's got this amazing brain. He kind of realized that there was more or less these like kind of pillars or buckets that the majority of our music was falling into. And we called them a numbering system, essentially like 1 through 6 being silence to total music taking over and being the focal point of the scene. So everywhere in between that, and it's sort of a sliding scale. So we'd say, all right, this scene we're kind of text painting, so we want the music to go along with what the people are saying. So we'll make it a 3, and we'll say that it's kind of supporting the speech and the monologue or whatever is going on, the rising action of the scene between characters. Or it's a 1, we need silence here, we have nothing. We just like need the vocal performance to pop through. Or we want this piece to be featured so heavily that the audience is going to sit there and they're going to listen to the whole thing, and that's the focal point of this scene. So going through that and knowing that ahead of time helps me really plan, okay, my workload. Is this scene a 1 or is it a 6? Or is it somewhere in between that? Sorry, my dog just came in. Hi, Cora.
That's true. Dogs and cats are welcome.
Yeah.
Cool, that's great. That kind of process stuff is so useful. I mean, when you're able to like compose in a practical way, without like getting too into the, just scanning patches. Like, yeah, that sounds cool. You can kill hours just previewing patches.
Yeah, it's true.
That's cool. Great, I got what we need there. That's awesome. You mentioned earlier Melissa's the episodes through her point of view. Why don't you take on these next couple of points, see what you can say about them?
Yeah, so I wanted to start from coming up with the story for the trial. or the musical story for the trial, I wanted to start from the fact that we're in Melissa's point of view. So this whole chapter, this whole episode is from her perspective. Therefore, the music's base needs to be something foundational about her music through the whole scene. Um, and so I took the easiest way for me to do that, or to think of to do that, was to take the rhythmic material, the clapping material, and to carry that through, because it's hard to have a melody and then need to write somebody else's melody in on top of that, or counter melody on top of that. That's much more challenging than just taking like the latent percussion from her leitmotif that I'd written, and filling that as the base for the whole scene. So
Okay, I see. Okay.
yeah,
So you wrote a Melissa theme, a sort of standalone Melissa theme, and then to extend that across the whole scene of the trial, you use just the clapping of it. Cool.
exactly.
Cool.
And then
Gotcha.
you'll hear her kind of like dub theme, the dub wub theme, kind of like come through often throughout uh, the the trial, throughout the
Hmm.
scene.
Cool.
Whenever she's speaking, you'll hear her music.
Cool.
Whenever, yeah, go ahead, sir.
Sorry. I'm getting too like ahead of myself because I'm like editing on the fly in my head.
No, it's all
Um,
good.
so
I
I think
ramble too.
I think I understand where you're coming from, but we might need to just make it a bit more clear to the listener. So first up, could I just get a line of you introducing the character of Melissa? Like, who is she in the show?
Yeah, Melissa Walker. Excuse me. Melissa Walker is our lieutenant colonel. She's the head of the she's the head of the military
Hmm.
that we have on our colony.
Cool.
Um,
That's good. And then, so could you sort of reiterate, almost like a syllogism, like in three sort of steps? I had to write a theme for her, so I wrote a standalone theme, and then to extend that, I used the kind of the clapping section, and you can refer to it if you want. Like this clapping that you're hearing is originally taken from Melissa's theme, and we've extended it out.
I missed the second beat there just because it cut out. Sorry.
Okay, no stress.
So the
So yeah, just wait, hang on. Let me just check something quickly. I think you've sent me Melissa's full theme. Maybe we can do like a comparison, like an A/B thing. I've done that before. Give me a
mhm,
sec. Just searching something. Yeah,
okay.
you've got Melissa's theme here. So how about we do this for this section? We go, okay, I had to write a theme for Melissa, a leitmotif, a character theme, and then because this episode is from Melissa's point of view, I wanted to extend that. So I used just the claps from her theme, something like that.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah. So I wanted to write a standalone theme for Melissa, as she is one of the point of view chapter characters throughout the series. And so she got her own leitmotif. I wrote that, and then as this is her perspective throughout the trial, I extended that throughout the whole scene. And I took her percussion from her main theme and used that as a base, or a sound palette base, for the entire scene of the trial.
Cool. That's perfect. And maybe we could just say, so what you're hearing now is the clapping just from her piece, and then describe how you made it. Like, did you actually just clap rhythmically and do it yourself? Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're hearing now is the creation of the. What you're hearing now is the claps from Melissa's theme, and I actually sampled. I took one sample from Ableton, and I slowed it down, and then I grabbed the rhythm from that, and then I did the claps myself, so that I could get it, kind of the way that I wanted to have it sequentially. And then I phased it so that it's actually kind of moving around your ears. So
Hmm.
the clapping's happening, like some is clapping on the left, some's clapping on the right. So it's kind of phasing back and forth. That's always keeping a movement going
Hmm.
throughout the whole scene. So it doesn't feel like it's so repetitive that it doesn't move anywhere. Even
Hmm.
though the clapping rhythm,
Hmm.
even though you're hearing that over and over again, since it's panning around and moving around your head a little bit subconsciously, it's keeping the rhythm driving and moving forward.
Totally, man. I mean, I love that part. I'm a big fan of that sound myself. I've done a lot of like hand clap stuff, and I think you nailed it it didn't sound repetitive. It was kind of mesmerizing, like hypnotic, and
Mm.
it creates you've got so much space in this track that when something does happen, you're like, oh wow, shit, that's like a real cello slide or something. So I think you balanced that nicely, a nice balance of space and sound.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, that was great. So you didn't actually hire a professional clapper. You didn't fly someone in from.
No, at this point, I would consider myself a professional clapper. So
It'd be a nice niche to occupy, the clapping guy. Yeah,
that's right. I
there
picked
probably
up
is a
clapping
guy.
after cello, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there probably is a guy or someone out there who, like, he's got it down, like the one finger, the two finger, the three. Like, how much
Yeah.
power do you need? Like, the audience can really sense it. Yeah, tough sell though. Tough sell. Great. So, just checking the sheet out. Wanted to work all speaking roles with leitmotifs into the scene. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so there are several speakers during the scene of the trial that we hear different interjections. We'll hear interjections from Jeff, our colonel. He's the finance officer of the colony.
Mhm.
I'm like tripping over my verbiage today. um, so Jeff Thomason, you'll hear him come through, and that's that low cello bum, bim, bum. You'll hear that coming through. Um, uh, that's actually one of the first themes that I wrote of the entire series. Didn't know who it was for, had no idea who I was writing this for. It just came to my head about 6 months before the script was even written. So he lasted, into this trial scene, and this is where we're hearing him for the first time. So Jeff comes in, we hear his theme. We hear Kyla, our medical doctor's theme. She's got several horn pads, so you'll hear those horn chords. Chip Heddleston, the character I actually play, he interjects a couple of times, and so you'll hear this kind of MIDI patch just really jokingly kind of come in and dip out, because all of his interjections are just jokes. They're just little quips. So I wanted like the attitude of the character to be represented or representative of the music that you're hearing.
Right. Good. Yeah, that's a nice setup for later, because when we'll play like the 7-minute track, be something like, so don't think of this as like a pop song. Think of this as like actually just a musical dialogue between the different instruments or whatever. That's a
great insight.
Good setup. Yeah. Cool. We'll mention that later. Cool. Let's keep moving. I just basically just want to get through the written down stuff, because then I can go off script and we can talk, and that's often where you get like the best stuff. So, but first, let's just get what we got here. So you want to get into the beats. There's a techno beat and dub beats. I think you mentioned the dub beat, but yeah, say what you like.
Yeah. So, the beats that I sample from Ableton and bring and drop in and then highlight at different times, they help to kind of break up the monotony of that clapping rhythm, even though it's continuous through the whole thing. You can add, and this is where I really draw on inspiration from John Adams. He does so much with minimalist music where it's a repetitive rhythmic theme, and then just by tweaking one of the maybe silences, so moving a rest either back an eighth note or forward an eighth note, you've changed the complexity of the rhythm just slightly, and now it sounds like something very different. Stephen Riley also did this, as well as Philip Glass. There's a whole cadre of composers from the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s that was using minimalism to try and get you into like a musical kind of trance, put you in a musical trance, and then push you ever so slightly in one direction or another, almost like you're looking through a kaleidoscope and you're just changing just a smidgen of you're twisting it just slightly, and it's changing the entire picture. So a lot of what I tried to do here was take this continuous beat, this repetitive continuous beat, and then add a little something to it, or take away a little something that would highlight or dampen the inherent kind of strong or weak parts of the beat that you'd hear.
Cool. I like that. Musical trance. That's definitely going to get some delay on it. It's a good phrase. And I think I know what you mean. Yeah, I like the way those guys. I mean, the minimalists broke the format. You know, that's kind of what I try to do with the show too. Is like break the typical interview format.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So yeah, we did briefly mention the cello. Maybe you could just describe, just in one or two lines, like, part of this theme you'll hear is like this beautiful sort of low register sliding cello, and that is me playing cello. Just kind of remind people that you actually do play cello.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're going to hear several things in this piece, many of them created digitally, but a lot of why I wanted to show this piece, the trial, to you all was that it features the cello, which is my main instrument. So it's a combination of acoustic instruments and digital instruments. And that's really where my bread and butter lies as a composer, I think, is being able to meld these worlds together.
Cool. That's great. Okay, I'm all good with that. You got challenges? Head over to challenges, see what you can say about those.
Yeah, so a main challenge in this was needing to get all of these characters' leitmotifs into the scene, into the trial scene, without overwhelming the audience. It's a complicated scene anyway, because emotions are running high. You've got different points of view, different perspectives of the characters. They're trying to get their ideas across about what Andy should be or shouldn't be as the colony AI. Should he be allowed to think for himself, or should he be more controlled? And so part of the challenge was all of these different voices are kind of shouting for supremacy or trying to get one point across to the other. And so how do I involve all of these characters' leitmotifs without it being a chaotic mess? And so I struggled a little bit at the beginning with that, until I realized that it was all about the tempo. What was the common denominator for tempo, and where could I kind of find a happy medium for all of these themes that are disparate? They're all from different, they're in different meters, they're in different keys. How do I get them all to kind of line up? Well, you just have to find what's the best tempo for them all to kind of feel comfortable. And then how can I interject them throughout the scene so that they both cover the amount of time that these characters are speaking and is not so overt and like in your face that it's going to take the listener out of the action of the scene. Because the one thing that I don't want to do as a composer is cover up any performance that's happening.
Oh yeah,
or
absolutely.
any sound effects that need to come through. I don't want to.
Golden rule. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
You at the bottom. You stay at the bottom. You stay in the underscore, the under regions, the nether regions.
Exactly.
I've had to deal with this in my head, like over the years. Like the musician is like, the arts is always the first thing to get cut from the school budget. I like to think of it as not at the bottom of the hierarchy, but outside the hierarchy, because people look at you as a musician, it's a total mystery. People, I mean, you must know this when you talk to people, what kind of music do you make, and you can't even, you like lack the vocabulary to describe what it's like, trying to like translate sound into, you know what I mean, like into feeling,
into words, into verbiage. Yeah,
exactly.
And, I mean, that's the struggle if you're kind of an art. I would call it like an art composer,
I know what you mean, yeah.
Where everything is standalone. It's it's not really collaborative art as much as it is performance art, right? Either it's recorded by musicians and performed, or it's a live performance. But with a podcast or with film or with television, all of that is collaborative. And so you immediately have to shelve your ego and say, what's the best thing for this whole artwork, rather than what's the best thing for my track, or what's the best thing for me as the composer. None of that matters. What matters is how does the whole thing come together, and how am I adding to it? How am I plus oneing rather than deterring or covering something up? That seems to be the kind of the main thing that I've learned over this entire project working on
Over the last lifetime. Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Yeah. Got you. Oh, that's great. I mean, that's a pretty awesome closing message too. So, yeah, we can do this. Oh, right. Let's just do snippets. Perhaps just at this point, we just say something along the lines of so we released the Marsfall soundtrack on Bandcamp, and before we go, I just wanted to play you a couple snippets from some of the other pieces. Here we go. I'll play them back to back, and then literally you can just send me 3 or 4 files.
Okay.
Just to show off the range,
Yeah.
Cool.
So we released the season 1 OST, the official soundtrack, and or that would be original soundtrack. Wow. I'm just like totally stumbling over all kinds of stuff today, John. We released our original soundtrack on Bandcamp, and at least season 1 of it. And I want to play a few tracks back to back for you so you can hear different modes and different styles that I've experimented with throughout the podcast.
Cool.
Here they are now in no order of importance.
That's great. Cool. And then what you'll perhaps just do is just send me the ones that you want me to play, like let's say 5 max, and I'll pick out some nice snippets and
Great.
just kind of have an excuse for some music,
Sure.
Cool. And then really all we're going to do now is intro and outro script, and then if you like, we can keep chatting a bit. And so basically just read this whole thing out. Piece of music we're listening to, we're featuring the soundtrack. Let me just double check. Let's be break for the music. I'll make music. Small thing. The trial. Cool. Go for it. Intro script.
All right.
And then when you're reading it, imagine that your piece is playing underneath, if that changes your delivery or anything.
Sounds good. The piece of music we're listening to in the background is called The Trial. It's featured in the soundtrack from the fiction podcast Marsfall. Today we'll break it down and get into why and how it was made. You're listening to How I Make Music, where audio drama composers get to tell their own stories. In this show, we break apart the music of a fictional podcast and take a trip into how it was made. In this show, we break apart the music of a fictional podcast and take a trip into how it was made. My name is Sam Boase-Miller. I'm a composer, producer, and voice actor from the US, and this is how I make music. Welcome back to How I Make Music, The Trial by me, Sam Boase-Miller. Thanks for listening in.
Spot on. Got it. And then same again for outro. Let me just double check this. Oh, yeah. So what do you think? I don't know. Let's just do it. It's fine. That's the full track. Oh, yes. Let's put in a sort of a disclaimer here. I'm just going to replace this. Sorry, just give me a sec to reshuffle this in my head.
Sure.
Cool. So I'm just breaking script a little bit because your track is it's almost 7 minutes, and I just want to basically warn people that it's an ongoing story.
Sure.
Cool. So the stars, could you ad lib something in those asterisks just to say, so this piece is a little longer than normal. It's like almost 7 minutes. Just think of it as the soundtrack to this whole scene. Or what do you think? I mean, I haven't done this before, Sam, but what do you think of playing the actual scene itself? Is that something that Marsfall would appreciate, or would you prefer just to have the soundtrack?
I'd say if they want to listen to the scene, they can go and check out the podcast. They can go and listen to that episode.
Right. Cool. Then let's ad lib something like like what I mentioned earlier of like each instrument or each part is kind of a character, and you'll hear them having this dialogue over the period of 7 minutes. But before we listen to that, thanks for listening to How I Make Music, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Cool. Give it a bash.
That's about it for this week's episode. While we get into listening to this, just to bring your attention to these different instruments, you're going to hear throughout this music several groups of instruments come and go. Imagine those groups of instruments as a character. You might even hear an interjection that only lasts 5 seconds. And that's another character just maybe shouting a joke into the void and not really getting a laugh from the rest of the characters that you might be hearing.
Cool. That's good. And then just chase it up with, we'll listen to the full track in just a moment.
We'll listen to the full track in just a moment.
Cool. And then you've got that section, and then you can take it from, but before we listen, just read it to the end.
But before we listen, thanks for listening to How I Make Music. Catch new episodes on howimakemusic.com or wherever else you get your podcasts. We've been listening to music featured in the audio drama called Marsfall. To hear the full story or to check out my other work, follow the links in the show notes. We video recorded the making of this episode. Check it out and support the musicians on audio drama by becoming a Check it out and support the musicians of audio drama by becoming a patron at patreon.com. Check it out and support the musicians of audio drama by becoming a patron at patreon.com/howimakemusic. Top tier patrons get a mention right here in the credits of every episode. How I Make Music is created by John Bartman. For audio experiences that keep people listening, contact John Bartman via the show notes. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, great.
Okay. And now, here's The Trial, a quirky, minimal electronic soundtrack in its entirety. My name is Sam Boase-Miller, and thanks for listening to How I Make Music. Catch you next time.
Spot on. You got a great voice, man. Pickups and common retakes. Just do 1 or 2 takes of those 2 lines below.
Sure.
Keep it flat. Like, here, take a listen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Here, take a listen. Here, take a listen. Take a listen to it. Take a listen to it.
Cool. That's all good. We did mention Eric. Did you actually say he's the show's co-creator? Yeah, you introduced him. Yeah, I think you did. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, that's the script done, and I'm quite curious about like your setup and how much are you working on Marsfall now? Are you guys releasing more seasons?
Oh, you cut out, John.
Oh, sorry. How much are you working? Is Marsfall still actively releasing?
Yeah, actually, it's funny that we're having this interview right now because we're about to drop season 3 next month. So May 25th is our first episode of season 3 is going to drop, and yeah,
cool.
we've been working on that. And actually, this soundtrack is going to be very different from the last 2 seasons for several reasons that story-wise you'll understand as soon as you kind of start hearing it.
Cool. Let's get that. Let's get you to just big it up. It's good timing. I didn't realize there was a season 3. So Marsfall season 3 is happening in May 25th, and something like that.
Marsfall season 3 is dropping. We're dropping our first episode on May 25th. We just joined a new network, Curious Cast, in Canada, and we're super excited about being able to share our podcast with so many people.
Cool, that's great. Yeah, I like it when the timing works out. It keeps it topical, benefits both parties. So that's great.
Absolutely.
Promo, we did that. Cool. So how much time do you spend just generally, like on average in a week? How much time do you spend? Because I also score stuff, and I'm just curious as like how other people go about it and balance their lives.
I would say probably around 25 to 30 hours a week, and that's usually in post-production. If I'm not in post-pro, then it's a lot less. But then I teach for a living also. So I teach cello, and I've got probably 12 students. So
jeez.
Busy. Monday through Thursday I'm teaching those lessons in the afternoons, but it's just like it's all music all the time, and I love it.
Yeah.
It took me over a decade to get to this point, so I feel really lucky.
yeah, totally, dude. I know how you feel. I've had those bursts before, but that's cool. And so you use Ableton, and then do you have any like go-to instruments of VSTs or libraries that you use? What do you What are you
Um,
rocking?
East West Sounds. I use a lot of their orchestral stuff. I'm not
Okay.
super happy with their Hollywood brass stuff. Not to be like a
Yeah.
downer or like
No, no,
get
that's cool.
get in
Yeah.
trouble or anything like that. Um,
You bad
but
mouth, you start potty talking, you're like your
yeah,
sponsor or
just
whatever.
shit talking East West. Like the standard for most film and televisions.
Yeah,
Um,
no, totally.
yeah, no, they're an okay thing. I actually have been getting into somebody just turned me on to contact
Mm,
instruments.
mm, mm.
Um and there's a really cool patch that we're going to be using for season 3 that's
Nice.
going to come from those instruments. So that'll be something to look forward to
Yeah.
um midway through the season. So
Yeah, Contact's incredible. It's just the quality, the average quality of even like their factory samples and stuff,
yeah.
I mean, how do you improve on it in this? Because in digital, like, people die, like a composer or a great musician will die, and
Right.
you can reproduce their sound to an extent, and you can get AI involved, but nothing's being deleted anymore. So it's just building on itself. So it's almost like
Yeah.
it's like this is where NFTs come in. People are starting to create this kind of, it's like a false sense of scarcity to put some value onto something which costs nothing to reproduce.
Right.
So musicians also now today I was listening to, you got to listen to Brian Funk's podcast. I was recently a guest on it and he's switched me onto it. He has conversations with composers that have very little to do with music. It's all about philosophy and it's about what underpins their work and attitudes. And all these people are just so
Mm.
like positive and gracious and the opposite of what you kind of grew up, in your like less mature years. You think a musician is like a certain way, and then you realize it's actually just this exercise in humility. Like I said, constantly being on the bottom of the hierarchy. But anyway, listen to that
Yeah.
that guy, this recent guy who was on the show. Yeah, it's just like wisdom. If you're looking for wisdom from other artists, that's a good place to start.
I would love to. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Always open to wisdom from somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it.
Um,
That's what these conversations are about, like finding out where you're at and what you do and all that.
yeah.
What samples you use, take it all down so I can steal your secrets.
Good. Good. Yeah, the more the merrier. I think, the one thing about music that I will continue to just be amazed by for the rest of my life is the ability to communicate with people around the world on a different level that almost has nothing to do with what language you speak,
Mhm,
because it is such another, not to be cliche, but it is that other language, right?
mhm,
we,
mhm,
we were saying earlier that we were having trouble describing maybe like the music that we write, and
mhm,
or trying to come up with the words to describe the music, especially to a layperson, who might not have like any involvement or background in music. And
mhm.
sometimes I just want people to just listen, like, hey, the best way for you to know me and to know my music is to just like check it out. Just
Mm,
go and slap on some really good headphones, or
mm.
go stand in the dark with some giant speakers and like put them, close your eyes and like just get swallowed up by the sound, and then
That's
you'll
the
know.
yeah.
Then you'll know.
That's it. Yeah, that's the ideal. You always imagine people getting the most out of your work if their eyes are closed and they're not staring at a screen and it's not a monophone speaker and like, yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, and I know what you
Yeah.
mean about music being a language. Like, okay, so I don't speak any like Mandarin, Chinese, or anything. So if I go to China and I'm like, um, please, can I have some food? I might be able to get the point across. But if I pull out my violin and start playing, then the person's going to look at me and go, "Oh, he's a musician. Obviously, he's starving. Here, have some food."
Obviously, he's
Oh, it's a
that's
music is a
great.
language.
That's
Music is a
good.
language. Yeah,
Everybody
cool.
knows that we're all starving.
Everybody does. Starving artists. Yeah.
No.
Okay, cool, man.
Uh,
Well, great to have you, man, and pleasure to chat a bit. And yeah, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you, John. I really
Yeah,
appreciate being
yeah.
here. Just a point of like a little bit of housekeeping. The
Mm.
beginning of the interview, I'm peaking just a little bit,
Oh,
maybe like a handful of times. So you might want to just like mess with
cool.
dampening some of the levels from like 10 minutes to 18 minutes or something like that.
Okay, no worry. I'm sure it's fine. I generally use in a 1 hour chat like this, I'll use maybe actually about 10% of the audio. There's only about 3 minutes of spoken audio in each episode, so I think it'll be fine. Shot
That's
for the
good.
heads
You'll
up.
make me look a lot less rambly and better by doing that. So.
Yeah, that's it.
Good.
Take one for the team. Yeah, but like honestly, it's great to chat to you. I mean, I get bogged down by admin, and then every time I have one of these chats with a contributor like you, it's like it reminds me why I'm doing the show. People are taking more interest slowly over time. So I wish, I wish Marsfall all the best, and the listeners. I've only heard the first 3 or 4 episodes, I think, because there's just so much out there, isn't there?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah,
And with giant catalogs of
yeah,
400 episodes to catch up on, and then
yeah.
yeah.
Are you
Luckily for us,
guys
though, we only have like 20 out, so
right? Yeah. Are you doing remote recordings and like the typical sort of coordinated line reading and that kind of thing?
that's what we had to do for season 3, this first chunk of season 3 that we are putting out, and that was a whole new experience for us because seasons 1 and 2 we'd been able to record as a big group for all of our group scenes in studio, so we were all together, or we would have like one actor that was not in the same place with us, and we'd do a source connect with them at another studio someplace else.
Right on.
But yeah, this year it's been all Zoom. Story wise, we got really lucky actually with where we were in the story. We were able to like kind of slim down and do it really bare bones and come up with fantastic story material. So I feel, actually we got, as awful as it is, we got lucky with the amount of time that COVID's provided us, because I think it made the art better and gave us more time to reflect on certain choices that we were making, and I think it just made us, anytime you have to problem solve and you're forced to do something, necessity is the mother of all invention, right?
Totally, yeah.
So
the future belongs to the people who are the most agile, which is Darwinian evolutionary theory at its most basic.
Absolutely.
We're doing pretty well. Like, sitting here in these like castles, like look at my little broom closet, man. It's like I've got guitars hanging up there.
Yep.
I mean, like, I don't even have to get up if I want to reach something. I can literally just grab it up there without even getting off my chair,
Yep.
And then I recently started, I started some ambient stuff because one of the previous contributors mentioned Atticus Ross and the soundtrack.
Yeah.
That vibe. So I started running this. This is a digital synth called X Station. It's got a whole bunch of nice sounds on their own, but then I started running it through this pedal from the 90s, this Boss GT6, which has got a very bad, I suppose, very basic bad mono distortion. It sucks that it's mono, but I'm getting this film sound. I'm getting this Book of Eli type of film sound by doing that. I've kind of hacked it. I figured out the way to do that. It's reverb from the 90s. I think that's what contributes to the sound.
I love that.
Yeah,
Book of Eli. Man, you're talking to the right person for that, because I just love that soundtrack so much.
Yeah, totally. And the film, the story, and then the big reveal at the end, it's like even more poignant for someone who's into audio, to realize that this guy doesn't have his vision,
Absolutely. I drew a lot of inspiration, honestly, from that soundtrack and from Prometheus. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I remember that, yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of the movie, but the soundtrack from that movie was amazing.
But sometimes guys like that. Yeah. Yeah, the world of soundtracks. Anyway, dude, like,
thank you,
I
John.
mean, I love these chats. I mean, I want to sit here and talk to you about VSTs and stuff forever. And I'm always open to it if you ever feel like just saying hi or hanging out or whatever.
Yeah.
Totally cool.
Great.
But right now, I've got to get to the beach.
Good.
A friend of mine's visiting, and I got to go hang out a bit.
Best of luck with everything, and let me know when you're going to post this, and I'll broadcast the heck out of it. And,
I can tell you that now. That's going to be, I'm recording you now. It'll be on the 21st so 1 week from Wednesday. I think that'll be and it's episode 101. So yeah,
Cool.
getting there. Or 102 actually. Anyway, cool. Thanks for your
Congrats on
thanks.
triple digits. That's
Yeah, I
awesome.
made it. Yeah, finally after 2 years. Yeah, got it.
That's great.
Sweet. Cool, dude. Well, have a good day and much productivity to you.
Thanks. You as well. Take care of yourself, John.
Cheers, Sam.